Well, to say that a chief executive's life is challenging, well, that's nothing. Compare with what Nine Entertainment's Mike Sneesby has been through in the past year. His chairman, Peter Costello, had to stand down after charging down a journalist at Canberra Airport. The company already had been forced to commission a report into its culture and behaviour after damaging allegations about sexual harassment and bullying in its newsrooms. And then its print journalists went on strike on the eve of the company's showcase coverage of the Olympic Games. Even Sneesby was personally attacked amid calls to stand down for carrying the Olympic torch in its journey to the Paris Games. On top of that, Nine's profit has slumped due to a weaker advertising market for television, publishing and radio. Against that, revenue at the streaming service Stan and also the property classifieds business Domain has lifted. I caught up with Mike Sneesby at Nine's headquarters this week.
Look, as a leader of an organisation, you have to be the person who is out there talking about your business, accepting accountability for all aspects of your business, and obviously talking about the results. And this week we're talking about our financial results, but at the same time, of course, it's an opportunity to talk about leadership and what we're doing right across our organisation.
You've got a cultural review underway about the behaviour inside your business. At what point does a leader, a chief executive, have to take accountability for that? I mean, you can't be actually sitting alongside every person in your organisation. How do you actually communicate down the layers about how behaviour should occur?
Yeah, look, obviously there's been a lot of public commentary about the culture here at Nine, as there has been right across the media industry. And, you know, the culture of an organisation is something that might feel a bit abstract, but it is the way that people interact and operate in an organisation. And notwithstanding the fact that we have a review specifically into our newsroom culture and behaviour, which our board and leadership is very much committed to in terms of reaching outcomes, giving transparency of the results of that review and taking clear and decisive action. We've also been on a journey over the last 3 or so years around some really important changes in our organisation. The putting in place of clear purpose and values across our company started about 3 years ago, and really starting to move our organisation to being a values and behaviours driven organisation. Because as you say, as a leader, you cannot instruct or tell each person in the company what they need to do. You have to engage them in a common goal, a common vision, a common purpose and a common set of values. And I think we've made a lot of progress, notwithstanding we have a lot more to do in our organisation, which again our board and leadership is very much committed to. We've put in place a leadership program across hundreds of leaders in our organisation, which has occurred over the past 12 months, which also reinforces the importance of those values and behaviours in the organisation, not just on the outcomes that we achieve from a financial or a KPI point of view. So it really is about evolving the business from a cultural point of view and bringing people on that journey and setting really clear expectations about what is expected, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
And what is the consequence of something not being acceptable?
Well, that's exactly right. There has to be consequences, and it depends on the range of what sort of behaviours you're looking at. But at one end of the spectrum, it's about assessing a person's outcomes on an annual basis around how they engage and perform as a person in our organisation, alongside what they deliver against their KPIs. To the other extreme of ensuring that we're dealing with more important and material complaints in the right way, and we're taking decisive action around those complaints.
But you even cop stick publicity-wise from even carrying the Olympic torch in France at one stage. Your journos were on strike. I mean, this is where the focus point is you. That's a pretty tough thing to have to bear sometimes.
Look, as a chief executive, as I say, you have to be the leader in an organisation and you have to take accountability. There's no point in dodging accountability or referring to things as being something of the past and focusing on the future. You've got to take accountability for what's happening at that point in time. And I think it's important as a chief executive and leadership in our organisation, right through to our board, that we take that accountability and that we get on with the right actions that are appropriate for our company and that are in the best interest of all of our staff.
Hindsight being hindsight, was the timing of your staff to go on strike just before the showcase of the Olympics. Was that unfortunate in your mind?
Oh, look, I mean, you can't determine timing of things, and as you say, there's a lot that's happened where I've been front and centre in the spotlight in recent times. But I'm always conflicted with lots of different things that are happening in the organisation. At this point in time, it was a cultural review combined with a negotiation with the union around an EBA, which is a very fair thing to be happening, combined with the opening ceremony of a very important Olympic Games, the first of a 10-year partnership with the IOC. So you can't determine the timing. You've got to deal with the things as they're put in front of you, and of course we continue to do that again across a myriad of priorities.
As the NRL rights come up in 2 years' time, at the moment the deal there is basically some $650 million. It'll obviously be more into the future. Will you bid for the NRL rights with Stan, or will you go with Foxtel as you currently do?
Look, it's too early to say, how those discussions might pan out. No, it's not that far away. But
Peter Blandy's very keen to actually negotiate this.
Yeah, I'm sure he is. Look, it is too early to say. Suffice to say that our ability to give exposure to a sport, to build its brand, and in the case of any sport, the NRL included, it's really important to be able to build your audience on free TV to get that maximum reach. Build your brand. That underpins.
But you can do this by yourself. You can take the digital rights. You can now do it through 9Now. You can now do it through Stan. You actually don't need a partner like Foxtel in the future.
Yeah, as I say, look, it's a bit too early. It's a bit too early to say, and that's something for us to consider.
So I've heard from very senior media executives, right, that they believe that you will get those NRL rights, but the AFL rights in 2032 for 7, they might just be too expensive. And this is one of the issues. You're battling inflation in your business right now. Costs are rising, programming costs are rising. It's how you control those costs, especially for the key sports rights. So what do you do when you're up against a Google or an Amazon or a Meta that just determines that they want to buy those sports rights?
Yeah, look, it's an evolving landscape. I think first and foremost, as a local media business, and speaking about the cross-platform capability we have and the integrated audience platform, Nine is positioned in the Australian media landscape as the only local peer to those global platforms. Our ability to distribute in free, on broadcast, on 9Now, subscription on Stan, but also to promote that sport through radio and newspaper publications. So we have a very unique proposition. Behind that, of course, it's still extremely important that the government backs the anti-siphoning regime. This is the regime that has ensured that all Australians get access to their greatest sporting moments, their greatest sporting events, live and free.
So can I clarify that for one moment with you? That traditionally has been coming through the aerial on top of a person's house into it. But in the future, of course, that may be actually through a platform such as 9Now, not a behind the paywall platform such as Stan or Foxtel. So are you suggesting that the terrestrial television stations own digital stations should also be a part of the anti-siphoning?
Exactly, and that hits the point around some of the gaps, I think, in the recent updates to the anti-siphoning regime. Certainly there were improvements in that regime, which included paid streaming services into that broader set of subscription delivery broadcasters, if you like. But it didn't go far enough in terms of the classification of the BVOD apps, that's the 9Nows of the world, alongside of the 9 broadcasts. So there is opportunity as the government comes up to review that in the future to see that improve and evolve. But the most important thing is the government needs to be committed to Australians seeing their biggest moments of sport live and free. And as we spoke about before, the idea that having free content as a loss leader for something that you pay for later is also not really free. So let's make sure that we're clear about Australians getting a fair go, free sport, live, the biggest sporting moments, without a catch.
Okay, so your business model is to put great events, great television in front of people, and advertisers and sponsors come with it. But when you're buying sports rights, say, how do you suddenly compete against an Amazon whose actual purpose, they can actually provide the sports rights or sports content, but at the same time they're actually selling goods? Is that difficult for you to compete against those types of businesses?
Yeah, it is, and that's my point, is if you are delivering what is supposed to be a free service, but the catch to it is we're going to hook you into buying other products as part of that, it's not really a free service. It's free with a catch. And when we talk about broadcast television, whether it's on free-to-air or live streaming, we're talking about completely free, available live and accessible whenever and however you want to access it. So I think that's what the government needs to make sure that they are keeping in mind. And at the same time, we also have to make sure that we are best prepared to compete in an open market. And as I said before, Nine is best able to compete in that market because we have more ways of monetising sporting assets. And I think coming back to the Olympic Games is a great example of that. In the Paris Olympic Games, we've spoken during this results period around the revenue that we've generated. Over $140 million in advertising revenue and over $160 million when you take into account subscription revenues. Now, those revenues are being written not just into broadcast television, but across all of our assets because we're able to monetise and distribute that content and generate a greater return. So our strategy is building our position to be able to maximise revenues, compete heavily for those rights and ensure that we're not sitting there looking for the government as the only solution to the future of television in Australia.
I'll tell you what, Mike Sneesby, always good to catch up with you, and I look forward to catching up with you again this time next year.
Thanks, Ross.